Hey guys! So today you and I are going to talk about the key phases and software. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, what are the key phases in a software delivery cycle? And the short answer is grooming, or basically preparing the story. Grooming, or evaluating, estimation, we can call it, let's call it estimation. Estimation, work, testing and code reviews and quality assurance, things of this nature, and then the delivery, or like the release itself. So this is how the majority of the industry is doing this. Most companies are working in accordance with this process. So what usually happens is that you have some type of backlog or some type of document that just states all the features that you want to add into the system. Now you don't have time usually to add all the things that, there's very rarely enough time to build all the things, so you have something we call the backlog usually. And that's just a big list or a document. It can be a Google document, it can be like a Microsoft Word document, or it can be a Kanban board type of thing with cards and stuff like that. If you're using something like Jira or Trello or whatever you're using, right? That just holds every single possible thing that your stakeholders, the people who are paying your salary or who are expected to make sure that the product is delivered, that they have thought up, things that they want to be done, right? So that's the first part, that is the preparation stage. Now, after the preparation stage and you made sure that you have your requirements and your scope and so forth and kind of what you want to be built, you move over to the grooming stage, or the estimation stage basically. And this is where it depends a little bit on company here. Now, the more mature companies, if you're working in an agile fashion or things of this nature, you're usually going to do estimations and things of this nature. Pretty much every company does estimations, but how they do it is a little bit different. If you're working in a very small company, or like not a proper IT company, but where they do things a little bit more ad hoc, they might not actually have you working in a team. They might just ask you as the individual developer, oh, how long is this gonna take, etc., etc., etc. But there's always an estimation, because there's almost no scenario where the stakeholders don't want to know when something is done. When is more important than anything else usually in IT, then that's something you're going to have to learn the hard way. It is the worst part about being a junior developer, or rather one of the worst things. And I mean, even I think it's a hassle to deal with time estimation. I don't think I know a single developer who doesn't hate time estimation, because it always depends. You sit there and you say 2 days, and then it turns out that shit, you didn't think about all of these corner cases, and then it took 5 days, and then you're the bad guy because you didn't see the future. It's a vicious cycle. But that's the next stage. So where you basically talk to your stakeholder, the person who wants you to deliver the feature, and then you estimate how much time is this going to take. And depending on your process, you might ask some counter questions and things of this nature, but that's in essence what happens. Then we progress to the work stage, where of course we do our coding and we do all the things and we make the feature nice and shiny and hopefully it kind of works. And then we go over to quality assurance, or testing, whichever you want to call it. And that phase is basically just, all right, we're going to have all the things that we believe to be important in order to deliver quality software happen. Now these things are usually, all right, we will make sure that we do code reviews, which is where one developer checks out the code, just reads through the code that another developer wrote to make sure that there are no bugs or like issues or code formatting issues or things like that. It's just it's like control reading. Just as if you were an author writing a book, you want someone to read the book before you publish it to make sure that you don't have any spelling errors or anything like that. So that's a very normal thing to have in a company, when you work as a part of a team, right? And then you might have manual testing, feature or acceptance testing, things of this nature, where you have some testing environment or something like that, where you might have a stakeholder, like a project lead or a product owner or something like that, who tests through the feature before you release it out into cyberspace where all your customers can use it. And then you might find some findings, and you might go back and forth here. You might find issues with the testing process, and then you have to do some work, and then you go back to testing, and then do some work, back to testing, back and forth. until you progress from the testing stage and everybody feels happy with it to the deployment, where you usually do this is the last step basically, where you, depending on what type of software that you're making, if you're making desktop applications, you might publish a new version and then send out some emails saying that, hey, version 2.0 or something like that is out. Or if you're working with a web application, you just deploy it to your servers wherever you're running them, if it's on-prem or cloud hosting, doesn't really matter. You have some process of how to get that software that you just built into the hands of the people that are paying you to have it, or the people that are making you money. And these are pretty much the same steps regardless of what company you work for. It's pretty much universal. It doesn't really matter if it's a small startup or if it's a big super IT company. The differences are usually found in how much process you have. In a very small startup, you might go through these steps in a manner of hours. Like it might go really, really quickly because you're like 3-4 people maybe. So you might just do this really, really quickly. And in a slightly larger company, it might take a day or two, because it's also like there's not that many people, or there's not that many steps that needs to happen until you get to the release, right? But in a really, really large company, it can take a long time. It can take several days or weeks in some cases, because you have a delivery cycle. You might not be able to just ship as soon as you're done. You might have to do all the work, make it sure that the store is ready, and then you have a release schedule where, every Tuesday in this every month we're going to do a release or something like that. It kind of depends on how the company is structured, but the overall steps are always the same. So what I want you to take away from this is that the usual steps pretty much for every company when you're delivering software is, number one, you have a backlog, or someone prepares some story, your boss, your CEO, or whoever, your customer, they have a business need of some sort, and they write that down in some type of document that becomes your specification. The second thing is the estimation, where you or your team is asked to, all right, answer how long is this gonna take, because that's what everybody wants to know. They want to know when this is done. Third step, you start working, you start producing code. Fourth step, you start testing and doing quality assurance. It varies a little bit how much testing you do here, but this usually entails things like code reviews. There might be unit testing and things of this nature, of course. You might be doing manual testing, where you just click through yourself and check things out. You might have acceptance testing, where a stakeholder, who's the person who's ordering the thing from you, they get the chance to play around with it before it's actually going out into cyberspace, or into production as we call it. And then the last step is that you do the actual release, where you actually release the code that you just produced into the hands of the people who are actually going to consume it. Have a great day.